guys, Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk, College Football Huddle, right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. How are you? Little new lead in tonight. We got to get some new music, I think, for this show. I'll search for some new music for next week, I promise you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a great long Labor Day weekend. It was a lot of fun for myself. Wall-to-wall college football from Wednesday basically till, Thursday really, right through till Monday night. Great games. A lot of fun. A lot of great games, some surprises, some great stories. You know, Mackenzie Milton from Florida State. What a great story, from almost losing his leg in a horrific injury he had at UCF back in 2018, coming into this game at in the fourth quarter against Notre Dame and leading them into overtime, almost upsetting the Fighting Irish. Great story. Florida State, I think, is making some great inroads, and I think possibly they're going to be a team to watch this week. But we got a lot to look at. Guys, we're going to look at some of the top scores, top games from last week, some of the winners and losers from last week. We'll look ahead at next week. At 7:30-ish, we'll have Lary Sorensen, color analyst for Wake Forest football, in talk about the ACC. Wake Forest had a nice win, albeit over Old Dominion. But listen, they scored some points, as we knew they would. We'll talk to Larry about some of the issues in the ACC. I will talk a lot about that. I'll start with the game of the week was Georgia and Clemson. We're going to get more into this game with Larry a little bit. But I wanted to start off with that because that was the big game of the week. And I'll be honest with you guys, Georgia wins this game 10-3, but they don't score an offensive touchdown. I don't think either one of these teams comes out of here a big winner. Georgia did move up to number 2 in the coaches poll behind Alabama, who just demolished Miami. Just when you think, you think getting 20 points, 19.5 points with Miami after Alabama's got to reload with a new quarterback, 2 wide receivers, their starting running back, your entire offensive line, basically. They don't lose. Nick Saban, I think, is 15-0 in opening games. And not against cupcakes all the time either. So, again, great weekend. But Clemson and Georgia. Did Clemson lose? Clemson looked terrible. 2 yards rushing. But Georgia, I mean, it's a defensive struggle. And did Georgia really help themselves that much? They will in the win-loss column, obviously. But I'll be honest with you, winners and losers for the weekend, I'm counting both of these teams in the loss column as far as, helping themselves along the way. Clemson, and we'll talk to Lary Sorensen at the bottom of the hour about this. Clemson's going to have a rough time potentially moving back up the ladder. They only fell to number 6. But, hey, Mickey Delaney, how are you? But you know what? The ACC, at least off of this week, did not look good. Shut out by the SEC in every head-to-head matchup they had this weekend. They had some good wins. And again, I don't want to touch too much on the ACC right now because we're going to get into it at the bottom of the hour. But, I mean, good gosh, I don't think that there's any big winners that come out of this. I'm looking for the bright banner to talk about this. But, oh, gosh. There we go. How about that? Week 1 winners and losers. Anyway, we'll talk more about that at the bottom of the hour. How about everybody thinks Ohio State came out a big winner. C.J. Stroud had a competent game, 4 touchdowns, replacing Josh Fields behind center. They beat Minnesota by 14, but Minnesota gave them a game for 3 quarters. Minnesota, coached by P.J. Fletch. He's a great coach. He's one of the better coaches in the country. Coaching Minnesota is not an easy place to be, right? But PJ Fleck, sorry, I said Fletch. PJ Fleck has done a great job there at Minnesota. They had a down year last year. I would expect them to bounce back somewhat this year. And there's Dave Guyette. Good morning. Sorry, Dave. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are, guys. So Ohio State's a winner because they need to get out of the box. They got a big game against Oregon this weekend. I guess 12 against 3, depending on the poll that you're looking at. We'll look at the coaches poll in a little bit. But I guess I would call Ohio State a winner because they get by what could have been a tough game, potentially. Hello, Rick Sherlock. How are you? We were just talking about your Georgia Bulldogs. We'll talk more about them at the bottom of the hour with Wake Forest analyst Lary Sorensen. I will say again, Rick, just as you joined us, and you can comment. We'll chat a little bit about this because I do encourage you guys' comments, as you know. I wasn't impressed. I don't think either one of these teams comes out of this a winner. Georgia does because they got the W. But if I'm, Clemson's got a good defense, but if I'm Kirby Smart, I am not excited about JT Daniels in that offense and not generating a single touchdown in that game. So I think both these teams could be hurting come the midseason as we start to talk about playoff teams. Some other teams that I think helped themselves this weekend a lot. If UCLA, I gave you guys UCLA last week. I picked UCLA to get to the Pac-12 championship game from the South. And I think the Pac-12 championship goes through UCLA. Chip Kelly has got that program going well. I told you they had them going well at the end of last year. Big game at home against LSU. Now, I know LSU struggled last year. Can't say much for Syracuse this season. They did win last week. We'll talk about Syracuse quick, Dave, in a second. And I might get into that with Larry Sorensen a little bit since they are an ACC club. Gosh, where was I? Here we go again. Totally lost where I was at. Oh, UCLA. I think UCLA is a big win. I know LSU was 5-5 last year. They were not a good team. And we'll see if UCLA is for real very soon. But I think UCLA is going to surprise a lot of people and be a potential playoff team come November, December, when we start getting down to those Final Four. I think the Pac-12 is going to sneak in. I said it on my Sunday show. I got a feeling the ACC might get squeezed out. Again, we'll talk a little more to Larry Sorensen about that at the bottom of the hour. But I got a feeling the Pac-12 gets back into that 14 playoff, and potentially it might be UCLA surprising everybody and not Oregon or USC. USC is going to be just good enough for, Helton to keep his job. Let's see what Rick's got to say. The offense will come along. Clemson played great defensive game. I agree. And again, unless you're Alabama, and again, Miami's defense sucked. Excuse my French, but not everybody's offense stinks coming out of the gate. And I do agree that the offense it can't get worse, Rick, right? You didn't score a touchdown. So we'll see what that game really means going forward. But again, getting a W is a big thing. I don't think Clemson is dead at falling down to 6. Again, this is my problem with preseason polls, right? Clemson starts at 2 or 3, whichever poll you were looking at, loses its opening game to another highly ranked contender, and drops just 4 spots. It doesn't take much to get back up into position to get into the playoff in those situations. That's why I'm not a fan. There really shouldn't be any polls till after we played a couple of games. That's just my opinion. Some other winners. Virginia Tech. Let's find out where that's coming from. Don't you hate it? I got stuff that plays in my head. I hope you guys can't hear it because it drives me nuts. All right, Virginia Tech, big surprise over North Carolina. Again, a game we'll talk about with Larry Sorensen at the bottom of the hour, but a very disappointing one. Of the bigger losers of the weekend was North Carolina, Mac Jones, and Sam Howell, 3 interceptions. Now, the officiating was horrendous in this game, but you guys who watch me know my motto: you don't let referees beat you. North Carolina was not good in this game. They didn't look like the 9th or 10th best team in the country. They fell way down in the rankings. They didn't quite fall out. I think they fell to 24 or 25. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. In fact, I can look at it right now. I don't necessarily have to wait. North Carolina actually falls to, in the coaches poll, they fall all the way to 24 from 9. That's how bad they were. Now, Virginia Tech, tough place to play. And how silly am I? You know, last week on this show, I talked to all the reasons not to bet North Carolina, 5.5-point favorite on the road in a tough place to play on the road, much less be a road favorite. And guess who bets North Carolina Friday night? We need a podcast for fans to get on board the Yeah, you know what? We do need everybody who sees the show tonight to get on the TGI Sports Talk pick'em game. I'll post. I should have copied the link. I wonder if I can do it quick, Rick. So it's in the comments. Actually, that's an excellent point. Let's do that real quick. Thank you, Rick Sherlock, for the plug. We do have 19, I think, in there now. I'm not sure if that's the right number, but I think we are. Guys, get into TGI Sports Talk professional football. This is college football, I understand. But get in my pick'em league. You'll be in the running. All you have to do is follow the show. I'm not going to pay out to anybody who doesn't follow the show. But if you follow the show, you'll be in line to potentially win a $100 Amazon gift certificate at the end of the season if you should be the points leader at the end. So we're missing a little college football here, but let me do this quickly. Now we got it. Let me put it into comments. And there you go. And look for it on the TGI Sports Talk page, guys. You'll see it there as well. Please join us. We're going to have lots of fun. I feel like I have got a really bad stream here going tonight. I don't know why. Hopefully it looks better on your end than it feels on mine. So let's see. What other comments did we have up here before I posted that and ate up all my bandwidth? Anyway, winners and losers. Where were we? Virginia Tech, we talked about. They could make a move. We'll talk about them in the ACC later on. Florida State. I think Florida State, even though they lost to Notre Dame, stayed close, forced overtime. I said at the top of the show, what a great story Mackenzie Milton is. He was a great quarterback at UCF, if you remember, when they were making their great run a few years back with Josh Heupel as the head coach. Actually, Scott Frost may have been there when Milton first. He's definitely recruited him, but he had a devastating leg injury late in the season. I want to say it was Thanksgiving weekend. They may have been playing Memphis, and doctors weren't sure they could save his leg, or at least make it so he could walk again. Here he's playing football. Came in the fourth quarter of that game, led Florida State to a couple of scoring drives, and forced overtime. Tremendous story. That's what college football is all about. So I think Florida State's a team on the come. I really do. And they've got obviously a great history, a great tradition of winning national championships and competing for national championships. This was a good game for them. Notre Dame, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'd be a little worried about what I saw. Yeah. Oh, my God. Miami fell. We talked about teams falling. They fell from 14, I think, to 22. And did not look good doing it. It's funny, the coaches poll I'm looking at here has them listed as 1-0. We can only wish. Alabama just reloads, guys. They come out of that game. They're up 27-0, I think, before I even had a beer. It was just, oh my gosh. I thought Miami's defense is bad. Manny Diaz has taken over the defense. He was a hotshot defensive coordinator for the team when they started the whole turnover chain. And I got another bone to pick with Miami, right? Down 27-0, and you recover you get a turnover. I don't remember if it was a fumble or an interception at that point, but you know what? Put the turnover chain away. 27-0. Pay attention to the scoreboard. Guys, I can't deal with that stuff. God. But great start for Alabama. Great start for Bryce, their quarterback, replacing my quarterback at the Patriots, Mac Jones. Great start for Bryce Young. Historic start for an Alabama quarterback, throwing 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. It looked like he was doing it against nobody, but still. Miami was 14th ranked in the country, if you want to believe preseason polls. Well, at any rate, I would say Alabama's a big winner this weekend. Ole Miss, without Lane Kiffin out with COVID, Lane Kiffin's offense was clicking as it always does, but their defense was much, much better. They did give up 24 points, most of it in garbage time, though. I mean, I think they gave up a couple touchdowns in garbage time, and from what I recall of late in that game Monday night. If Ole Miss plays any kind of defense, watch out for them in the SEC. They could surprise, and they'll be tough for a lot of teams. Who else would I call a winner? UCLA with Penn State going into, again, a tough place to play in Randall Stadium in Wisconsin, and just playing a really, really good football game against a really, really good football team and winning 16-10 on the road. Good start for James Franklin and the Nittany Lions. And guys, we're going to get a bad storm here. Let me shut this window so my computer doesn't get rained on. If the power goes out, I apologize. You'll understand. What else we got here? UCF I liked a lot. Gus Malzahn's debut. They were down to Boise State by a couple of touchdowns in the second half, came back and won that game. I like UCF. I think UCF and Cincinnati and potentially Memphis, or maybe even SMU, are going to have a great race in that AAC, the All-American Conference, a conference, as you know, I love. So again, a nice win for Gus Malzahn out of the gate. Texas, I think, with a nice win. Tough spot for them. You know what? They're playing a Louisiana team that is really, they were ranked last week. Just fell out. They're only in the top. They were 25. And again, I'm not putting much stock in those games, but Louisiana's got a tough team, and Texas really handled them pretty handily in Steve Scarsazian's debut. So watch out for Texas. Big 12. While there's a lot of chaos there because of the realignment and whatnot, and Oklahoma and Texas getting ready to leave in 5 years, which will probably be 2 or less. Texas might be one of the better teams in that league this year. I like Iowa State. Iowa State had a tough time with, I think they played Northern Illinois. Should probably check that out before I misspeak. Iowa State played Northern Iowa, 16-10. They were a big favorite, but they do squeak out a win. And I think it was a good win for them. I still think they're the best team in the Big 12. I think they'll have a shot at the playoff. They'll be in contention. They'll be one of the 6 or 7 teams in the running at the end. So again, they get away with a squeaker. Good call here, Rick. Cincinnati gets off to a great start. We're playing Miami of Ohio, I guess, but there's a lot of mismatches this week. But they get off to a tremendous start, both offensively and defensively. Miami didn't score any points until garbage time. 49-14. Good start for Cincinnati. Cincinnati's also got some tough games on their schedule this year. I believe they've got Notre Dame at Notre Dame. What else do they have? Oh, you're killing me, this thing. They got Indiana on the road. They're going to play, and then they got a tough. As I said, that league is tough. That's the meat of their. Boy, it's just killing me. I hate these videos that pop up on me. So anyway, that's the meat of Cincinnati's non-conference schedule, but that's tough. They beat Cincinnati. I'm sorry, Cincinnati beats Notre Dame and beats Indiana, who really stunk it up against Iowa last week. And I think I gave you Iowa. And then they run the table in the AAC. They got to be considered for the playoff, guys. They're going to be in consideration, depending on what happens with the teams ahead of them. But again, All the more reason we shouldn't have preseason rankings. You know, I mean, good grief. Somehow after this fiasco of Clemson, 2 yards rushing, they're still ranked ahead of Cincinnati. That's the fallacy of these polls. Too soon. Too early in the season, guys. Too early. Boston College with a big win. 51-0, I think. Tennessee played only Bowling Green, but they win by 20-some points. Big game for them this week with Pittsburgh coming to Rocky Top. If Tennessee beats Pittsburgh, watch out. Again, another team in the SEC that could be a sleeper. Got Cincinnati we talked about, UCLA we talked about, Ole Miss we talked about. How about some of the losers? We've got a few minutes to talk about. We talked about North Carolina. I'll talk more about them with Lary Sorensen at the top of the or bottom of the hour. Again, I think they're one of the big losers of the weekend. Notre Dame, even with a win, I don't think they were impressive. I think Notre Dame is heading for an 8-4 season-ish. I think 8-4-ish is going to be the best they can do. I don't like what I saw out of this team, especially after they couldn't put this team away. Don't like what I saw out of their defense. We'll see. Not an easy schedule for Notre Dame. They got some tough games as well, as always. They always play a really good schedule. LSU, I think, comes away a big loser this weekend, too. This was supposed to be their rebirth year. I love Ed Orgeron. I think he's a great story. But I think he caught lightning in a bottle 2 years ago, and I'm not sure that they can repeat it, and he could repeat it. And they're going to be he gets off to a start like he did last year, and he's well on his way with his loss last week to UCLA. They'll be calling for his head. They were calling for his head a few years back before he had, again, that great season with the national championship. Great guy. And you know what? He'll probably end up taking the fall. If not this year, then probably soon. Because I don't see Notre Dame or LSU rebounding that quickly. Oklahoma. 30-some point favorite at home against Tulane. They're lucky they won a game by 5. The game was supposed to be played in Tulane, by the way. I'm not sure. I said they were a 35-point favorite at home. Can I see where that game was played? I don't know if I can. Bear with me a second here, guys. Cool your jets, as they say. If this game was played in Tulane, guys, I got a bad feeling, Oklahoma might have been on the losing end of this. And I know we talked about this last year because Oklahoma got off to a horrendous start last year as well. So did Shane Rattler. And he got off to a really rough start again this week or this year. And, your two top, in my mind, the two top Heisman candidates, they're the big losers this weekend. Sam Howell, 3 interceptions against Virginia Tech. Shane Rattler did throw a couple touchdowns, but a couple interceptions, barely gets by. Tulane. Guess that game got moved. Yeah, the game got moved to Norman, Oklahoma. That game's played in Tulane. They might have won. Or who knows? I mean, again, it's easy to say, hindsight, right? But look, I call them one of the losers of the weekend. Teams to watch. And what else would I call losers this weekend? Again, it's hard in the first week. A lot of teams not playing really good teams. Oregon, I would say, is potentially a loser last weekend. They just get by a Fresno State team, a good Fresno State team, but they're a 20-point favorite at home. Fresno shouldn't have the ball in the fourth quarter with a chance to win the game. USC, nice win for them over San Jose State. It was not a bad team, one of the great Cinderella stories of last year. Iowa's a winner. Iowa 34-6. Guys, if I don't take North Carolina last for Friday night, I go 4-0 for the weekend. I don't know what possessed me. What possessed me to do that? But oh, here's one of the biggest losers of the weekend. Sorry, Mickey Delaney. Washington Huskies at home to Montana. 13-7 losers. Big game for Washington this week, traveling to Michigan. Are they going to be able to get back in there? Well, there's Mickey commenting now. I think Michigan win over, well, not much faith in your team there. They're right. Sorry, Mickey. Tough start for Washington. Who else would I say was, there we go again. Arizona State, 41-14. This is one of the sleeper teams. A lot of people pick for a sleeper and coming out of nowhere type team. A lot of controversy surrounding this team with some violations committed by the coaching staff. 4 coaches. Thank you to our host network, Northeast Streaming Sports. Beautiful new logo in it, guys. I got to get mine changed in a couple places, but awesome to have you guys with us. So anyway, nice win for, who did I just say? Come on, guys. Help me out. Well, totally lost track of where the hell I was again. Here, let me throw Dave Guyette a bone. Listen, Ohio U is not a great team. I get it. Not a great team. Dave Guyette, big Syracuse fan. Syracuse gets a win on the road against Ohio. I understand, but, Ohio's an FBS 1 team. Good win on the road for Syracuse. They're not going to get 10 for any national championships or ACC championships. But a nice, I wouldn't say big, but a good win for Syracuse to get out of the gate. They got Rutgers, a much improved Rutgers team. Gary Schiano is a really good coach, and him coming back to Rutgers has reinvigorated that program a bit. They had a couple of good wins. They're always going to have a tough time at competing in the Big Ten and recruiting. They should not be playing in the Big Ten any more than Syracuse should be playing the ACC, but that's another story. But this is going to be a good matchup, Syracuse and Rutgers this weekend. The winner of that game comes out 2-0. And a nice start for one of those teams. Syracuse, latch on to anything you can that's a positive at this point. Who else? Anybody else I missed? Anybody other comments you guys want to chat about that I missed on these games from last week? There's some teams that really set themselves up as teams to watch here. We all knew Alabama was going to be good. We know Georgia and Clemson are going to be up there. Oklahoma survives the upset. They'll be there at the end. Texas is a team to watch out for. They made a big move up the polls. I don't have time to look at the polls just yet, but you got to watch this UCLA team. They went from unranked to 16, I think, this week. Ole Miss, as I mentioned, they're now ranked. Now I got to get rid of this, Dave. Now they're ranked. I can't get this out of here. There we go. UCF, keep an eye on them. Iowa, big matchup this week, and we'll talk about some of the big matchups coming up. Iowa State. This is a big one for both teams because both teams, I think, are in contention. Ohio State could have some pressure on them in the Big Ten from an Iowa in a championship game, I think. Iowa's got a much better team than they've had in the past, much more balanced team. They can throw the football. Florida did have a good win this week, but I got to see Florida play some good teams before I get really excited about them. They're going to have a tough go of it in the SEC, I think, Rick, but a nice win to get started for sure. Keep an eye on that Ole Miss team, as I mentioned. Keep an eye on Tennessee. Now, once you get into the SEC, things tend to change for some of these teams. I get it. In the ACC, we're going to talk to Lary Sorensen, but watch out for BC. 51-0, I think the score was this weekend. Again, not against a powerhouse, but this was a team that had a pretty good season last year. And I think you got to watch out for them. So that's some of the teams I would be keeping an eye on here as we head into week 2. And it's going to be I don't think there's quite as many big games coming up in week 2, but there's some really, really good games. So starting with Oregon and Ohio State, and starting or continuing on with Washington and Michigan. It may not seem like a big game, but it's a big game for both those teams. Michigan gets a good win for themselves last week. They need to get off to a good start. They need to beat this Washington team at home for Jim Harbaugh to get some confidence back in that program. Probably should check my phone. It could be that Lary Sorensen is having an issue. No, it doesn't appear to be. That is not him. Okay. That's a poker game. Can't jump into that tonight. Nice win for Charlotte, by the way, this week. Another ACC with a tough time. And again, Wake Forest, though, Larry's team had a nice victory over Old Dominion 42-10. The SEC really had their way, though, with the ACC teams this week. And I believe they got a couple more matchups this week. So we'll see how that goes. As we wait for Larry to come in here at the bottom of the hour, you know what? Here's something I'll throw in there right now, just because I want to make sure I don't miss it near the end. I want to put out my heartfelt, if I can find it again. I got too many banners, guys. God, I need somebody to work the board. Well, I can't find my banner, but here's what we'll talk about. I want to talk about Sam Cunningham. Sam Cunningham, there it is. 71 years old, great player at USC, All-American in 1972. He's a 3-year player at USC. Was a number 1 draft pick, number 11 by the Patriots. Still the Patriots' all-time leading rusher, believe it or not, at 5,500 yards-ish. MVP of the 72 Rose Bowl. He passed away here yesterday, I believe, at 71 years old. And we want to, send our best wishes along to Sam's family and friends. Again, a great player. Being a Patriot fan, I got to watch him a lot when I was a kid, and he was quite a player, an exciting player as well. So we want to give our best wishes and our thoughts and prayers to his family and friends, as I said. And rest in peace, Sam Cunningham. And with that, we'll bring it back up a little and bring in Lary Sorensen from Wake Forest. Hello, Larry.
Keith, how you doing, man? How's everything going?
I am doing wonderful. We had a great holiday weekend. Hopefully you did, after a nice win for your Wake Forest Demon Deacons to get out of the gate.
It was kind of a coach's delight type win. It was a team that they knew they should beat. And if you can imagine Wake Forest being a 31.5-point favorite, but they were. So it's a game you should win, but you go out and you do just enough right and you do just enough wrong to give you a lot of teaching points and a lot of things to work on, but still a pretty comfortable win and some good things to build on as well. So it was kind of a coach's delight type game.
Yeah, it's a good way to work your way in, and I think they've got another game like that this week where it should be a winnable game. But again, get yourself warmed up for the ACC main event.
Yeah, because they jump right into it. They've got Norfolk State this weekend, and again, a game that you should win, obviously. Maybe a little bit tougher because they've got one game under their belt. Old Dominion did not play last year, and Norfolk State did not play last year. So they're really coming into it, but at least they've got a little bit to build on. Norfolk State does. But Florida State the following weekend. So once you jump into the ACC, they jump into it in a big way.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. And I want to get your thoughts on some of the things that happened throughout the ACC this week. It was kind of a chaotic week for the league overall, but I think one of the bright spots for the league was, in a losing effort, was Florida State and the great quarterback play, the inspirational quarterback play from Mackenzie Milton. Milton, right? Milton.
Yeah. Milton.
In the fourth quarter.
I was riveted. I was riveted.
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but it absolutely had me fascinated. My heart was going 1,000 miles a minute because I kept saying, "Don't anybody hit him."
Right.
Slide, get down. Well, a couple of
Right.
times when he ran the ball, but he was magnificent coming out of the gate and throwing your first pass at a new school in a big game like that and having a 22-yard reception down the sideline that was right on the money, without warming up or anything like that was pretty spectacular. Great story. No question about that. Tough ending for him. Just a tough ending.
Yeah, in defeat, I think Florida State is kind of one of the winners of the weekend, as I've been talking about it. They've had some tough times recently, and I think they might be starting to turn a corner a little bit in that ACC.
Well, they always get a lot of talent. It's harnessing the talent, getting it to play together, getting it to play well, and it's always one of those marquee games. When the schedule first comes out and you first get your look at it, you check off boxes, and that's one of the games that you always put a check mark next to.
We will go from the unfortunately near the bottom of the league with Florida State the last few years, but back to the top. The big game of the weekend was obviously Clemson and Georgia, and I kind of started off and. I know Rick Sherlock, one of my loyal followers, is a huge Bulldog fan, but I came away thinking both these teams lost in this game as far as a race for prominence because the offense was just non-existent. And I don't know if the defenses were that good. I just don't think Clemson is going to gain 2 yards rushing every single game, of course. But what do you see? What do you see from this game? Do you see enough from one of these teams to be a national champion?
I think they both could be national champions. That Clemson is going to get better. It's the first time in the 5 years that I've watched Clemson that they look like they were a little bit out of sync and a little bit confused at times, which is really, they've got such a great coaching staff. It was really unusual to see them look a little discombobulated. But Georgia did a lot of good things. The defenses were very good, as you expect them to always be. Again, I hesitate to throw any kind of edicts out there after just one game. I've got that old baseball philosophy. There's a reason that you play 162. There's a reason you play 12 of them. The big thing is that Clemson just doesn't have any margin for error now because they trip one more time and then they are out of that.
Well, let me ask you about that before we jump into some of the other stories in the ACC. Well, this is one of the stories. I mean, is the league good enough that can Clemson, even if they run the table, can they get back in? I mean, they don't play North Carolina, which obviously had a bad game of their own. They don't play Miami, which had a worse game than North Carolina. But they were looked as this, second and third best teams in the league, most likely. Is the league good enough for them to get back into that top four?
Well, that is a great question because they did fail their first test. I think that as time goes on, we will see some of the talent come back and play to the kind of levels that everybody expects the different teams to play at. I think Miami will come back and they'll be a very difficult team to contend with later on in the season. And I think North Carolina will bounce back, although I have to admit there weren't a lot of tears shed in Winston-Salem when people were looking at the North Carolina score.
I'll tell you, it's funny, that game itself. I got to tell you a quick story. I mean, I spent half my show last week talking about how North Carolina, they're a really good team. Love Mac Brown. I love Sam Howell. He was my Heisman favorite, which he kind of is a loser last week too. But I came up with all these reasons why they were overranked, and going into Blacksburg, Virginia is a tough place to play to begin with and be a road favorite. Stay away from them. I bet them Friday night like an idiot. And after spending a week saying, don't bet that team.
Well, see, it's that heart thing. That heart takes over a little bit, and it's hard. Wake Forest went up to Blacksburg a couple years ago, ranked 19th in the country, and that atmosphere is just wild. It's just crazy. It was the day that Foster, they had a retirement for him. And he'd announced he was going to leave, so it was very emotional, and they spanked Wake Forest all over the place. And it's a really difficult place to play, really fun place to watch a football game, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, a friend of mine's son went to BC, and we went to a lot of games, and that was one of the road games I went to, and oh my God, that was one of the best atmospheres for college football. And I've been to a lot of places for college football, as you have. Great atmosphere there.
Yeah, I'm still kind of partial to the big house up in Ann Arbor because that's kind of where
Well,
I grew up, and it's
yeah,
fun to
that's
go to a game there. But it's the whole weekend was fantastic. The pageantry and a reminder, of how good things can be.
yeah.
And since Wake Forest played on a Friday night, I came home after the game. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. Got home about 2 in the morning, and just kind of stayed in the pajamas all day Saturday and watch football. It was a lot of fun.
It was wall to wall. The NCAA in whole, I think they took advantage of this. Not much going on the professional level, and they stretched that. I couldn't believe there was like 20 games on Thursday night for crying out loud. That's a lot for college.
It was a little bit weird with the NFL going to just the 3 preseasons and taking this weekend off. I don't know if you saw the TV numbers for some of the games, but they were off the charts. They just had great ratings for a lot of those games, like the top 2 or 3 ever on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. They got really good numbers.
Yeah, it was a good opening weekend. Like you said, getting the fans and the bands and everything back in the flow. It's hard to believe, watching the games. Saturday afternoon, especially when I was sitting outside and it was kind of chilly and it was almost a fall day up here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And it felt, I didn't realize how much what I missed last year, even though they played and there was games, but you're missing something, right? But you don't sometimes really know what you're missing until you have it back. And this was just a great weekend, I think, for college to get kicked off.
Yeah, it really was. We did a lot of the games last year, but in the studio, with we didn't travel on 2 of the games,
right?
And trying to do it off of a TV monitor is just really, really difficult to do. Fortunately, Wake Forest had a number of games that were inside the state, and we were able to travel to those. But trying to do a football game or a baseball game off of a TV monitor is a tough thing to do, and not nearly as much fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. What else in the ACC from last week would you say what are your thoughts about the I mean, the SEC had their way with the league, obviously. We've already touched on a couple of games. I thought BC was impressive, even though they're not playing a top-notch team, but you went 51-0 or 54-0, whatever it was. That's an impressive victory. What else did you like about the weekend from
the BC? The BC team was one that stepped out on me because I'm a big believer in what Hafley's doing up there, and he's got a terrific quarterback. Jerkovic can really throw the ball around.
Yeah.
If they get any kind of a running game, I think they're going to have a really exciting year. And Wake Forest ends up the season up in Boston College, so I'm really hoping that'll mean something. Boston was always my favorite town to go into. I loved going in there to play as a baseball player, getting to pitch at Fenway. While it doesn't sound like a dream, it really was a lot of fun to do. And
Cherry Hill's another great atmosphere for college football too. Yeah.
It is. And when you think about a college campus and you go in there and you stroll around. My son came up to see us a couple years ago when we did the game there and getting the chowder in the press box before the game and all of that's really a lot of fun. And the great buildings, it looks like you think a college campus should look. And terrific place. So they were impressive. I think they've got a chance to have a very good team. And I thought that Sam Howell was the other huge surprise to me. I thought that he was going to come out of the chute hot, and I thought that he was going to make a really solid run at the Heisman. Now, if he reels off 11 phenomenal games, this one gets forgotten. Fortunately for him, hopefully he gets it out of the way early. But we are an amazing society about removing people from lists once you have one subpar game. So we'll see.
It's easy to get on them and easy to get off them sometimes. You're
very
right.
True. Very true.
I talked a lot, I've talked last week and this week, Heisman rankings, preseason top 25 rankings. I wish they wouldn't do preseason top 25 rankings because it makes it hard for the teams coming from the outside to catch up when teams have already started at 1, 2, 3, and 4 without having done anything.
I think that's a great point. It puts so many people behind the 8 ball, and they're actually outperforming other teams. But because they've gotten that early ranking, people always look to them and say, "Well, this is what they will do." Doing a basketball projection the day after the Final Four is over is just for the next season. Just seems like the silliest thing in the world to me. But I get that guys have to guys have to write columns and they have to talk on the radio and they have to do podcasts and everything else. So.
Well, we all got to have something to talk about, right? Actually, Rick brings up a really good point talking about venues. Army, I can't leave Army out. If you haven't been to a game at West Point, you got to go if you're a college football fan. It's just awesome.
I am on the edge of my seat already because Wake Forest does go up to Army this year. And again, my son is going to come up from New York and be in our press box for that. And the AD at Army, Mike Buddy, is an old assistant athletic director at Wake Forest. He also was the stand-in for Kevin Costner in For Love of the Game because he did pitch for the Yankees for about 5 years.
No
and
kidding.
In the big league. So he was a major league pitcher. Now he's the AD at West Point. So about once or twice a month, I send him a little note reminding him that we're coming up. And he said that they're going to put on the big show. And I can't wait. I've heard it's magnificent. And I am really, really looking forward to that experience.
Yeah, when you watch the cadets walk in, it's really a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what, it's a good football team too. Jeff Monken's a really good football coach. I'm really surprised he's still there, actually.
Yeah,
but
you can't sit on your heels against that team. You got to be ready for everything.
And of course, he's got to bring up Georgia because he's a Georgia fan. So we all know it's a great party at Georgia. We all know that.
Well, that's another place that I would like to get to. I haven't been to a lot of the SEC schools for football. I've been to all the Big Ten schools. I covered Michigan for 3 years as their sideline reporter, which really was just a way to go to the away games in a private jet, basically, is why I took that job. But,
anytime to get a private jet, that's a good reason to go to a game.
Yeah. But there are a lot of places. I've been to the baseball games at all the SEC schools, but haven't been to the football and have to make that a priority in life at some point in time.
Let's talk a little bit, Larry, before we let you go about this week's schedule with the ACC. I mean, I'll tell you what, being a Miami fan, I think I told you when you were here last time, I'm really disappointed with last week's result. Glad I didn't have any money on that game. But I think they better be careful playing their home opener this week against Appalachian State, which they better not take lightly.
Well, very familiar with App State for a couple of reasons. Number one, 97 Michigan. Obviously, I started watching App State after that. And then having the chance here in North Carolina to go up there, call a game, Wake Forest, beat them in overtime on a last-second field goal block. That was extremely exciting. And so you follow that program, and they've got some terrific players. No question about that. Miami is a little bit of a multiple personality team to me and kind of always has been. You're just never quite sure what you're going to get weekend to weekend. And, again, to use your phrase, I'm not sure that's a team I would bet on in any particular game.
I know you probably can't talk too much about the wagering aspect of this sport, Larry, but
I'm not a gambler because I figured that every dollar I lost was another sprint I had to run to make that dollar. And so I kind of stayed away from the gambling side of things.
It's probably a good idea. It's it's a mixed bag this week as far as the ACC schedule. I mean, what games really intrigue you this weekend besides the one you're calling?
Obviously really focused on that one because it'll be interesting to see how North Carolina bounces back. A lot of disappointment because a lot of people were expecting big things down there. And, we follow Duke, was another Charlotte. Team that was a pretty big disappointment. Good for Charlotte. It's a program trying to get itself organized and going and glad to see them going. But Duke was really a surprise and a disappointment. But again, in Winston-Salem, that doesn't break too many people's hearts when a team loses.
Pittsburgh, one of the interesting matchups for me is Pittsburgh at Tennessee. I got a lot of people I know that are kind of high on Tennessee being a sleeper in the SEC this year. And Pittsburgh is getting a little bit of love in the ACC as well. This could be a good matchup, I think.
They are. I think Narduzzi is doing a very nice job up there, and defensively especially, I think that they can really damage you a little bit. That is a good football game. That would be one that – and see, my broadcast partner is Stan Cotton, who's been doing it for 26 years at Wake Forest, is a Tennessee grad. So we always pay a lot of attention to them. Joe Milton, their quarterback, is a Michigan kid that transferred over. So he will allow Michigan talk to incorporate into our broadcast as long as it relates to Tennessee a little bit. He'll allow me to do that. But I think that could be a really good football game as well. Yeah.
And since we have some Syracuse viewers, I know Syracuse has been on some rough times, but nice, I said a little before you came in a little bit. I mean, going to Ohio and winning isn't great for a lot of schools, but Syracuse getting out of the gate with a good win on the road, I think, is important. And I find this matchup with Rutgers this weekend very intriguing, actually.
I think that's a great point. Rutgers is, again, another team that you never really know about, but I'm a huge Dino Babers fan, and he's the one guy when I watch the Monday morning ACC coaches conference calls. He's the one guy I make sure I tune into every Monday, whether they're playing Wake Forest or not, because I'll watch the team that's going to play Wake, the team they played, and then I watch Dino, because I keep saying to myself, he's the kind of guy I could have played for. You want to run through the wall for him and go that extra mile for him. I hope he gets things back on track up there. He's good for the game. He's good for the conference. I really hope things get rolled back together the way they should be in Syracuse.
Yeah, and Gary Schiano's got Rutgers playing some pretty good football. I mean, they're never going to be very good in the Big Ten, unfortunately, because they shouldn't be there in the first place. But this would be a nice win for Syracuse, I think, at home, too.
I think absolutely, and a lot of bragging rights up in that part. They recruit against each other, obviously, so there's a lot riding on that as well. Schiano's done a good job for a long time and got kind of caught up in some controversies along the way, which set him back maybe just a little bit, but he can coach some football, no question about that.
Well, he's probably back where he belongs. Before we let you go, Larry, I mean, anything else on the football front that caught your eye either this past weekend or coming up that you would have us look out for?
Well, I don't think we really got to talk too much about the Alliance, which is, I think, a really interesting thing. We'll see how that all shakes up. It's kind of a big do-nothing so far.
What is it? I mean, that's why I haven't touched a lot on it, because what is it? Right now, it's just a bunch of words. I don't get it. So.
Yeah, I talked with a former athletic director recently, and he was a little bit more open than he could have been when he was the AD at a school. And he said they really talked for a long time without saying a darn thing.
Right. I think it was. It felt like something just to slow the SEC down, right, and get them off the back pages. But you read the articles, and as you said, nothing's really. I don't see where it helps anybody right now, unless there's more to come.
I get the feeling you're kind of a traditionalist like I am, and I hate to see things totally broken up and dispersed and always trying new things and looking for the next better thing, because just as often it turns out to be the next worse thing than it was the next better thing.
Yeah, well, if it was up to me, we'd put some of these conferences back the way they were and get some of these, more traditional rivalries back to where they were. And it's not going to happen. I know that, because of TV and money rules the day. But it is what it is. But still,
you got to admit, though, it leads to some very creative trophies, and big game names.
There's a trophy for every game that's played today. I mean, what's the trophy they're giving away in the Wake Forest game this weekend?
Well, this is the first time that they've ever played Norfolk State, so there's not much of a rivalry going there yet. But it'll be good to have the game, and a good chance to tune up again. And like I mentioned before, Florida State comes rolling into town the week after, and that's one that you always highlight on the schedule. You know that they'll have some great players that can do a lot of different things, and hopefully by that point in time, Wake Forest will have its house in order a little bit, and it should be a good football game.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to watching that one, actually. It'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah. 3:30, it'll be on one of the big networks more than likely. So
yeah, good. Well, Larry, thanks for coming in this week, and we'll have you in periodically. I don't want to monopolize your time. I know you're a busy guy this time of year, but we really appreciate the time you can give us and give us some insights on Wake Forest, the ACC, and football in general. So thank you very much, as always.
Lots going on, and great to be watching college football again. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Excellent. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, Keith.
Okay, have a good night. Larry Sorensen, one of my favorite people to have on. What a great guy. Always good things to say. Smart. You know what? Wake Forest is a school that they've been on a borderline having good teams in different seasons. And who knows? They could come back this year, because their offense, man, is really something to watch. You get a chance to watch them against Florida State. That's probably going to be a track meet here in a couple of weeks. So if you get a chance to watch that, please do. Rick, sorry I didn't get this up. I didn't see it until late, but you were there for Tarkenton. I can't speak. I can't think. Rick, I don't want to call you out, but you're older than me, and there's days I can't put 5 words together. Anyway, that's great. Fran Tarkenton was a great player at Georgia, and gosh, he kind of revolutionized the game a little bit when he came to the NFL. So what a great player. So thanks to Larry Sorensen for coming in. Let's look. I want to take a look. There's some games I want to look at for this weekend before we move on. And again, you guys can continue to pop up your comments about any games you want to talk about, any games you're excited about seeing this weekend. There's a few that I know I'm excited about seeing, starting with that Oregon, that Oregon and Oregon. And let me try to get to the right damn screen. Thank you. Was on the ACC schedule for Mr. Sorensen. So this weekend, I already talked about Miami Appalachian State. I think that's going to be Miami's got to win this game, and Miami cannot take this game for granted. And they had better be careful. They go out of the gate 0-2. Those people are going to be looking. They paid a lot of money to get Manny Diaz to come back when he left to go to Temple, and Mark Richt retired. We hope Mark Richt's doing well, by the way. He's battling Parkinson's, and I believe he's still doing some commentating for the ACC network. So we wish him well, by the way. But he better get it going. They paid a lot of money to get him back here to Miami, and so far he's really had nothing to show for it. The defense is worse than it was before. Forgot to talk to Larry about the whole damn chain. Anyway, Ohio State, Oregon. This is a big game for both teams. I mean, a lot is expected out of Oregon. Last year with the truncated season, especially in the Pac-12, they didn't have come close to even being relevant in the national championship conversation, which Oregon has been used to being over the years. But Marco Cristobal has done a great job there, but I think Oregon's in trouble if they don't really, really perform well here this week. They're not going to be able to make it to the playoff, in my mind, without beating Ohio State in this game, and I don't see how they can do it. I think C.J. Stroud did a great job in his first game stepping in for Justin Fields, and again, much like Alabama, Ohio State just keeps reloading. They don't need to rebuild, and the Coach Day's done a great job picking up the baton from Urban Meyer and continuing the great run Ohio State's been on these last few years. So that should be a good game. Iowa State, 2 teams I'm really high on in their individual conferences. I can see Iowa giving Ohio State a run in the Big Ten this year. I just think they're very balanced. But I think Iowa State's a better team. They play in a different conference, fortunately for Iowa, and they can absorb this loss and still get to a championship game against Ohio State. This is a great matchup, and I believe it's in Ames. It is in Ames, Iowa. These teams are evenly matched. I think the Iowa defense is going to be tougher for Iowa State. Iowa State, again, struggled last week, but I think I'm going to stay. Iowa State and UCLA are my 2 outliers to get into the playoff. They might both get there, depending on what happens with the SEC. Because you got SEC, you got Alabama, Georgia, and Texas A&M, and maybe even Florida. I'm going to have a shot at 2 of those slots. So the Pac-12, so the ACC is going to be have a hard time getting a team in right now. As Larry said, we don't know. Week 1, you can't overreact. I'm trying not to, but it's my job, I guess. I just think that they're going to have a tough time getting a team to a playoff. So I think there could be 2 teams from the SEC and a Pac-12 and a Big 12 team in there. And I like either UCLA or Cincinnati can slide in there too, by the way, guys. They run the table, as I said earlier, having beaten Notre Dame on the road and Indiana on the road. It's going to be a hard time keeping them out of there, undefeated, with a couple one-loss SEC teams. It's going to be we need 12 teams, and we need it now, not 5 years from now. What other games we like this weekend? Texas, Arkansas, I find a bit interesting. Texas with a nice win last week. Going into Arkansas, they need to keep this momentum going. Steve Sarkisian is a really, really good football coach. You know, that when he's got things in order, and he appears to have things in order, and he may be the coach the Longhorns have been longing for to get back to national prominence where they were used to being historically and have not been, certainly since Mac Brown left. And even before that, they were in a wasteland for a while. I talked about that game. I'll tell you, Utah and BYU interests me. Utah played really good football last week. Utah's very, very highly rated in the Pac-12. And BYU is always, always very tough and very tough at home. So that'll be an interesting game. Stanford at USC. Stanford disappointed last week against Kansas State. I'm really shocked at what's gone on there the last few years at Stanford, because I always looked at David Shaw as one of the great coaches in the country. Really thought he'd be one of the next guys to take the step to the pro game here a few years ago. But of late, Stanford's had a really tough time out there in the Pac-12. So this is an important game for them and an important game for USC. They have got to keep the momentum going. This is a team loaded with talent. And again, their problem has been viewed as their head coach, Clay Helton. Why he's still there, I don't know. They've been just good enough to help him keep his job, but they have not been the national power that USC fans have been accustomed to again throughout decades ago with John McKay and then John Robinson. And then they had a lull until Pat Carroll got there, but Pat Carroll brought them back to prominence. And they have not had that type of success since. Pittsburgh and Tennessee. I think this is going to be a fun matchup between the ACC and the SEC. I like Rocky Top here. I think Tennessee is going to prevail in this game, and it'll be a big game for them. I talked about Syracuse and Rutgers. Larry Sorensen talked about what a great person and a great coach Dino Babers is. I think so, too. He's had trouble recruiting a quarterback. But they got a nice win on the road last week. This would be a nice matchup for them. Rutgers is playing good football right now. They got a really good head coach. And this could be a win that gets Syracuse building some momentum before they get to their SEC schedule. I like Buffalo at Nebraska. Nebraska is a team in trouble. They won last week against Fordham. How Fordham was tied to 7-7 with them at one point, I have no idea. I think Fordham plays an intramural schedule. I really don't think they even play in a league. So Buffalo, who had a really good year last year and got off with a good victory last week, is going to travel out there to Lincoln, Nebraska. First-year coach Maurice Lindquist is trying to keep that momentum going that Buffalo had last year. And this is a spot Nebraska better watch out for. Scott Frost is in a lot of trouble out there, a lot of trouble. And these are games he can't lose. They won big last week, but I'm not confident they're going to blow this Buffalo team off the field because I just don't think that they have the culture's changed there so much. Another game I like, and this is going to be kind of a nod to Carlos, and Carlos isn't here tonight, so I hope you watch this afterwards, Carlos, and comment. Middle Tennessee at Virginia Tech. Middle Tennessee is Carlos's kind of pet team this year, coming out of the Conference USA, I believe. I should probably check on that before I say I'm wrong. No, correct. Conference USA. They had a nice win last week. They come to a Virginia Tech team that's going to be off, could be riding high from that game last week with North Carolina, knocking off a top 10 team for the first time in quite some time. Has Virginia Tech turned a corner? Are they going to get the momentum going here? Or is Middle Tennessee going to come in and catch them on a downslope after that high of knocking off North Carolina last week? So some interesting stuff. And Washington, Michigan. I almost forgot about that game for Mickey Delaney. Washington with an atrocious game against Montana last week. Michigan with a good win. Jim Harbaugh needs good wins. He can't lose this game to Washington at home after Washington comes off a loss to Montana. And Washington was very highly rated in that northern division of the Pac-12. They're going nowhere. You're losing to Montana at home. That team going nowhere. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? Anything else we missed, guys? Throw it out there if you got something you want to chat about. Let me take a quick gander at the news and make sure I didn't miss anything. I did want to take a quick run through the top 25, and then we'll probably get out of here. This is the coaches poll. This is the poll I like, to be honest with you. Alabama, obviously number one, got 59 first place votes out of 64, by the way. Georgia Bulldogs, number two, not a crystal clean performance by any means last week for Georgia, but they do move up 2 spots to number 2. Ohio State moves up 1 to number 3 with a nice win last week. Oklahoma drops from 2 to 4 with a nail biter. They're lucky they got out of there with their lives last week. Tulane gave them all they could handle. Clemson only falls to number 6. As bad as they played, and this is my problem again with these preseason rankings. I'm going through them just because they're there and we got to have something to talk about. But you know what? Again, oh, sorry, I skipped Texas A&M. Sorry, they moved up from 6 to 5, but then Clemson's at number 6. And Cincinnati, just trounces their opponent. Again, not the level of opponent that Clemson lost to. I get that. But this has been a pattern through the years. And why the Cincinnati Bearcats and teams like them have a hard time breaking into that top 4 and finally getting a group of 6 team in there. Notre Dame moves up a spot to number 8 from number 9. I'm not seeing it out of Notre Dame. I'm not seeing a top 10 team here, and they move up a slot. Iowa State with a struggling victory, similar to Notre Dame. They dropped 2 spots to number 9. Iowa, big move from 18 to 10. Watch out for Iowa. It's a great game against number 9 Iowa State this weekend. I'm excited to watch that game. Penn State with a big jump from 19 to 11. We talked about Penn State. I don't know that I was a believer. I think Rick Sherlock called me out on that over the weekend. I didn't bet the game. Stayed away from it. Penn State with a nice victory over Wisconsin last week. Oregon, we talked about them. They move up to 11 from number 12 with not an impressive victory over a overmatched Fresno State team. They got a great offense, but you can't be a 20-some point favorite and just have the team with a chance to tie the game at the end. Florida stays at 13. USC up 1 spot to 14. Texas with a nice jump from 21 to 15. One of the bigger movers, not even rated, UCLA, my outlier. Remember this. Save this tape, good or bad. UCLA moves up to 16 after not being rated. Coastal Carolina, again, number 17, up from 22. Can Coastal Carolina repeat that historic season they had last year? Wisconsin falls from 12 to 18. Virginia Tech was not ranked. They moved into number 19. Ole Miss not ranked. Number 20. Watch out for Ole Miss. Played some defense. Lane Kiffin. That team's going to score a ton of points. They play any defense. Watch out. Utah with a nice win last week. Moves up from 24 to 21. Couple of big droppers down here. Miami fell from 14 to 22. Carolina falls all the way from 9 to 24. That's not easy to do, guys. Again, that's why we shouldn't have preseason polls. Arizona State did move up to 23 from 25. And the Auburn Tigers, interesting. The hated rivals are at 1 and 25. Auburn 25, Alabama number 1. Just missing out, getting in TCU, North Carolina State, another team to watch out for. 2 teams to watch out for. Gary Patterson at TCU, great coach. Great coach. He's had a couple of down years. Been a lot of talk about him moving on. Watch out for TCU this year. And Gary Patterson getting that mojo back in at Texas Christian University. And North Carolina State also is a team that could be on the move this year. And then just behind them were UCF and Liberty. And then a bunch of other teams that we won't talk about right now. So fun week 1, guys. I don't know about you, but I had fun. Anybody's got some great college football music? I mean, I've got, I got the pro football music, which I should only play for a minute because I might get kicked off the air. Oh, not that one. How's this one? I need some college football music. Somebody's got a clip of college football music. Send it to me. I need something to play in and play out of the show. I don't want to play my TGI Sports Talk music, but I'm going to play it tonight because that's all I got. Guys, I've had fun tonight. Hope you did. Thanks to Lary Sorensen for coming in, talking ACC football, Wake Forest football. He's the color analyst for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. We got another great weekend of college football to watch. Join me Friday morning. I'm going to review the NFL season with Ken Schott. Ken is the sports editor at the Schenectady Gazette. We'll be reviewing all of the NFL divisions. And then this weekend we'll have our Sunday Stream of Consciousness show, which is always fun with Mark Mancini, our special guest from Mancini Media. And guys, as Rick Sherlock said, get in the TGI Sports Talk Pick'em League, NFL Pick'em League. We got about 20 guys. You can win yourselves a $100 Amazon card if you win and like and follow TGI Sports Talk. So do all of that, and we'll see you guys next week. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. And I'm going to have to say I am out of here. Have a good night.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about the team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any